Okay, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Lucy. I am part of the account management team in London for Statista. And today I'm just going to take you through a little bit of background on what exactly Statista is, where the data is coming from, and then I will also take you through a tour of the platform itself, just so you know what exactly is available to you and how to navigate the platform. You should have a little question box in front of you. So if you do have any questions or if there's anything you'd like me to go over in more detail at any point, feel free to just pop a question into the chat box. Cool. So to start off with, Statista is a global market intelligence platform. We have coverage of every industry and comparable data across 150 countries. There are two sides to Statista. So just less than 50% of the data that you'll find on the platform is Statista's own data. We gather the data ourselves and we analyze it all in-house. We have over 200 researchers working on this. The other side of Statista is more of an aggregate side. So we also have statistics from over 22,500 sources on this platform. And these are a combination of exclusive statistics to us. So we either purchase data or we have a number of partnerships that we have this through. Or we also have a number of publicly available statistics to us, just to make this like a one-stop shop for you. As part of the access that you have, you also have access to our global consumer survey, which is another area of the platform that I will take you through as well. This survey is something that Statista runs ourselves. Our main survey has over 1 million interviews across 56 countries and regions. Through this, we cover 11.5 international brands across 50 topics. And really, this looks into quite a lot of detail on buying behavior and media usage, covering both the online and offline world of the consumer. It's designed really to help marketeers, planners, and project managers understand proper consumer behavior and consumer interactions. This is more of a do-it-yourself analysis. So you can select your own criteria, create cross tables, and customize your own target groups. So now I will go on to the platform itself. I will start off with the global consumer survey. So once you're on the platform, to access the survey, you can just click through here, and this will take you through to the survey itself. There are two ways to go in. So the main survey is up here, and that's the bit that I was talking about with the 1 million interviews, the 56 countries. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see that we also cover a number of content specials as well. You can think of these as like mini versions of the main survey. So they might have fewer countries that they cover or fewer participants, but they go into a lot more detail on that specific subject. So for example, digital advertising is a really deep dive into that subject, but it obviously only covers US, UK, and Germany. But for today, I will stick to the main survey. So here we can select the country or region that we would like to focus on. So if we go for the UK as our example, well, actually, let's go for Saudi. So once you've selected your country or region that you would like to focus on, you can then select the update that you want to focus on. So this is the survey that you would like to select to. Once you've selected those, you can choose this information button. So this information button will give you all of the information regarding this questionnaire. So it will tell you what language it was taken in, the number of respondents, their age range, and when exactly their survey was taken. Also here as well, you'll be able to find all of the details regarding the methodology. And if you wanted a list of every single question that was asked in the survey, you can also download the full questionnaire. On the left-hand side, you have basically the chapters of this survey. So if we just go and select through, we could look at, if we select gender, and let's select age range, for example. And then if we stick to an e-commerce and retail subject, so let's look at some shopping behaviors and look at retail and FMCG, and let's look at some online shopping as well. So you can basically go through here and select as many questions as you'd like. Let's look at some internet access questions as well. And they will all start to populate the main page in front of you. This is the most basic way you can use a survey, and you can just scroll down through the questions to find your answers. So if I find one that's a little bit more interesting, so for example, which of these products or services are you interested in? The majority are clothing and consumer electronics, then shortly followed by food and drink. Once you're happy with all of the questions that you're selected, you can then export this. So you can export it either by a PowerPoint or into a CSV. So sorry about that. So you can see here, for example, 67% people in Saudi purchase clothing and apparel and shoes in physical stores. Once you've selected all of these, you can then start to export. To make this slightly more interesting, you can start to cross-table things as well. So say, for example, you wanted to look at how different age groups shop. You can cross-table it just by moving it up to the column here. Oh, sorry. You can cross-table it. And if we go back to that question regarding what kind of products are you interested in, you can look and you can start to see the differences between those age groups. So this one, for example, cosmetics and body care, it looks like the majority of them are kind of in the 30s, 40s and 50s versus 18 to 19-year-olds. Far fewer are interested in purchasing these. And again, once you're happy with this and you can see all the differences, you can go through as well. Now, obviously, this is quite a basic thing, looking at different age groups' shopping habits. But you could also cross-table other things. So say, for example, we wanted to look at something slightly more interesting, and we could look at offline purchases by type. Oops, sorry. And you can see, for example, those who shop in a department store find that customer reviews on the internet are much more helpful than those who, say, shop in a bookstore, for example. And you can kind of make things a little bit more interesting by cross-table. Yep, the data is real from that country. Yep, sorry, I just had a question. So whatever country you have chosen, those are answers from people who live in that country. So only those who live in Saudi will be answering this survey because I've chosen Saudi as the country. Yeah, that's correct. There's also a comparison tool. So say we select, if we stick to our interest in products and categories question, we can compare. Yep, cross country is exactly what we're doing now. Thank you. So in here, you can press the edit button and you can select as many countries as you'd like. So say you also want to see if, let's choose Australia, and we can go for China, and let's go for India as well, for example. But you can select as many different countries as you would like, and they will all start to populate down here, and you can see how different countries have answered those questions. So for example, we can see that in Saudi, 69% are more interested in purchasing consumer electronics, and then in mainland China, it drops down a little bit to 56%. Or here, for example, looking at drugstore and health products, again, a little bit of a difference. So it looks like Australia and Saudi are about 39% versus 22% in mainland China. And you can do this for any of the questions as well. And you can, of course, select as many countries as are available. And again, once you've selected all of those countries, you can export this. Another interesting thing to look at is also if we change this, and we can also compare over time as well. So you can start to look at how this has changed over time. And of course, now that we've had coronavirus as well, a lot of e-commerce and a lot of online shopping has changed quite a lot. So this becomes quite interesting questions to ask when you're looking at those e-commerce subjects. So again, you can flick back through and see how people's behaviors have changed over time as well as by country. Also, if you don't want to look at percentages, some people really prefer them. Others like to see the exact number of people. And by doing that, if you just select this button here and select absolute numbers instead, you can see the exact number of people who have answered that question, and you can use that for your analysis as well. Finally, another interesting thing that you can do on the Global Consumer Survey is you can also create your own target groups. So if there was a specific kind of person that you wanted to look at, you can start to look at those here. So you can create your target group here. And say, for example, just to keep it basic, say we wanted to look at men who were, let's say, over 30. You can select all the criteria that you would like, and let's name this, and save and apply. You'll notice on the bottom right that number started to change the more I selected different criteria. So this will let you know the number of respondents who fit that criteria who took this survey. So obviously the more criteria that you pick, the more niche that setting is going to be, and the lower the number of respondents who fit that criteria. We recommend keeping it above 100 people to keep it statistically significant, but it will let you know, there will be a little alert that comes up if you have gone a little bit too niche for your analysis. But once you're finished, you've selected all the criteria that you like, you can save and apply, and it will appear up here. You can then scroll through and you can look at those answers again. So again, if we're sticking by this products and categories that you're interested in, and you can see these figures have changed a little bit. So now cosmetics and body care is about 25%, so it has dropped lower than that 39. And you can see other things have gone up, food and drink a little bit, household appliances a little bit, shoes. And these will be the answers from those people who fit that criteria. You can save these as well, so they'll all appear up here, and you can reuse those criteria as much as you like. Finally, we have the search function. This is really handy, especially if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit niche, or you're looking for a certain brand. They will start to appear here as well. So if we stick with an Xbox example, you can see here all these questions that will pull through asking about Xboxes or mention them at some point, how many answers there were, and whether it's a multi-pick or a single pick question. Just saves you a little bit of time if there's something really quite specific that you're looking for. That as a whole is the Global Consumer Survey. Obviously, there's a lot more of the survey that you can go through in terms of areas of the survey, you know, anything from finance, health questions, any kind of travel questions. But before I leave the survey, does anyone else have any questions they would like to add? So the respondents that we have for each country, we try and select respondents in a way that makes them representative of the online population of that country. So there should be a pretty equal split between actual number in terms of kind of age range or gender or any of the other demographics. We try and keep it as representative of the actual population of that country as we can. Obviously, we can't get it perfect, and it's maybe a little bit off the actual number of people or the actual number of people who have a specific education type or something, but we try our best to get it as close as possible. Any other questions at all before I leave the survey and go to the main platform? Okay, perfect. If you do think of anything though, again, feel free to just pop a question in the chat box and we can always revisit it. For now, so the sampling method is explained more in the methodology. Just to explain that in a little bit more detail, so let me just go back through. So within the Global Consumer Survey, we use a split sample. The reason we do that is because the survey is so large now and we ask so many questions, we can't expect a single person to answer every single question in every single chapter of the survey. So everyone who takes part in the survey answers the characteristics and demographics, and then they answer one or two other sections depending on how large that they were. This means that we're getting the best data that we can in terms of people kind of answering a few questions but answering them much more honestly. But again, if you want more detail about the methodology, you'll find it in that information button, and you can download the full methodology here in terms of how exactly we've selected samples and everything like that. That will all be in here, so feel free if you want more detail to have a little flick through there too. But now we will go on to the main platform. So the first one that I'd like to take you through is the outlooks. So these are market sizing tools. We originally started with the consumer, digital and mobility worlds. We then added tech, advertising and industry. And then just a couple of months ago, we launched our health market outlook. These are all laid out in pretty much the same way. So I will just take you through one or two so you kind of know the kind of things that are in there and how to navigate through. So if we go into our digital market outlook as an example, and into our market directory, you'll be able to see everything that's covered within this outlook. So this is everything from digital health to digital media, any kind of various different apps that we have, e-commerce, e-services, smart home. But if we use e-commerce just as our example, at the top of the page in every outlook, you'll always have the same things. So you will always have some highlights, so just a few kind of bullet points summarizing everything that's on the page, a market definition, what's in and out of scope, and then a report attached as well. The report attached will always be from a global perspective, but just provides a really lovely background into any kind of market trends, market sizing, and any kind of key players or regional developments within that market as well. So just show you a little flick through. So first we're giving you a little bit of an overview, looking at some revenue forecasts, and a little bit of a market development forecast, key players, online shopping attitudes, cross-border shares, etc. But if we go back to the main market outlook, so once you've chosen your market, and I chose e-commerce as a whole, but you could narrow that down further. For example, if you just wanted to look at fashion e-commerce or books, for example, you can then choose your region. So you can either look at the market from a global perspective. You could choose a political region, a continent or a subcontinent, or go into a specific country as well. So this is where we cover those 150 countries. So again, if I stick to Saudi and just let that load up again. This is all of Saudi's data. We also have a comparison tool here as well. So if you wanted to continue that country comparison, here you can select up to 4 other countries or regions. You just select them through here and confirm, and they'll then populate the data below. But for just today's demonstration, I'm just going to keep it to 1 country so it's all clean looking and clear. All of our outlooks are standardized into US dollars. We do have a currency converter here if there was a different currency you wanted to use instead. But first of all, we always start with our revenue data. Everything in the outlooks are all forecasted up until 2025, and we update these every 6 months or so, depending on what's going on as well within the market. All of these graphs are completely interactive. So this is looking at e-commerce as a whole. But say, for example, you weren't interested in toys and hobbies or furniture and appliances, you can just remove those and the figures will all update for you accordingly. You can also change the type of chart that you wanted to look at. So say, for example, you don't like this kind of stacked bar chart, you can change this into a different bar chart or into a line graph as well, if you'd like. They're all downloadable too. And if you have them in this graph format and download it, will download as an image. Or alternatively, if you have it in this table format and download, it will download into Excel, and then you're free to use the data and create your own graphs as you need. So that is revenue. We then have revenue change. We then go into average revenue per user, revenue share cross-border, payment types here as well. So looking at cards versus direct debit, users and penetration rate, some demographic data as well. So here you can see users by age, by gender, and by income. A global comparison here as well. So the global comparison will always show you your top 5 countries in terms of revenue. You can hover over any other country you wanted to see. You can also toggle forward into forecasted data or go back into historical data. Or for example, if you wanted to see every single country, you can change it into the table format, and everyone will be listed here as well. Finally, down the bottom, we have a little bit on our methodology, and we also have some key market indicators. Our key market indicators will change accordingly based on the region that you've chosen, and it doesn't quite fit on the page, but everything down here is forecasted up to 2040. These are the kind of indicators that we use to create our forecasts, looking into population, consumer spending, looking at households as well, exchange rates, and ICT, consumer market, and things like that. They're also really handy to know about as well, just in case you ever needed to see any kind of population data or consumer spending. It's just handy to know that they're all at the bottom of the page. Like I said, all the other outlooks are pretty similar in terms of their layout, so I won't take you through every single one. I'll let you kind of explore the others. The only other one that's slightly different is the country outlooks. So again, we can go through and select the country that we would like to focus on. And again, at the top, similar kind of layout in terms of it's still your highlights at the top, your market definition, and this time a country report. The country report goes into quite a lot of detail on that country's economy, their demographics, any kind of import-export data, health data, business culture, that will all be in here. And then alongside the country reports, we also have a number of city reports. This one's looking at Riyadh, for example, that dive just that little bit deeper into a smaller region than the country report. So now we've chosen our country. Every country is split up into these different segments as well. So you could focus on that country's economy, their digital economy, going into some health data or environmental data. But for now, I'll just stick to the economy. And again, we have this comparison tool here should you want to compare. But first of all, as we're looking at the economy, we're going into kind of GDP. Again, this is all forecasted for you, looking at GDP per capita and then the growth rate as well. Next, we have gross national income. Again, split per capita and then the growth rate as well. Consumer price index, exchange rate data, some investment data, so looking at investments as a share of GDP, and then annual investment growth as well. Finally, we have our control of corruption index. Here this will again show you your top 5 countries, similar to the previous global comparison. You can hover over any of those. Finally, at the bottom of the page, we have our key market indicators again, but this time much more country specific, so looking into more detail into things like exchange rates and value added by sector. Finally, in all of the outlooks as well, if all of the data is useful for you, we do have a full page download here, which will let you download all of the graphs. Are there any questions at all regarding the outlooks? Okay, perfect. So next we will go into the reports. There are 2 ways to go into the reports. You can either go through one of the categories or you can search in all reports. This uses a keyword search. And again, you can kind of narrow this down a little bit further by adding additional keywords or filtering down on the left-hand side here. The main thing I want to show you in this area are just the various different content types we have available and the differences between them all. So the first that we have is the dossier. So the dossier is a compilation of statistics on your chosen subject. There are normally between 30 and 60 statistics within here. So if we look at the e-commerce in Chile, there are 2 ways you can download these. You can either download these as a PDF or into a PowerPoint. First of all, this looks at a bit of an overview and then goes into some segmentation, top companies, consumption, and then some special dates as well. So this is what you'll find if you go into any of the dossiers. So you have your main data here. So this is looking at retail e-commerce sales globally up to 2024. And you'll have all of the sourcing information down the bottom of the page. All of these as well are linked to actual statistics on the platform. So if you wanted to download any of these straight into Excel, you can just click through the link and download into Excel here. But flicking through, really, it's just a compilation of statistics going to different segments here. Online purchase intention, change in shopping habits due to COVID, top companies, etc. Following on from the dossier, we have the Dossier Plus. The Dossier Plus is still that compilation of statistics, but within these, our research team have gone back through all of the information just to provide an extra layer of detail. So here they explain a little bit more into what exactly is happening in the market, why is that happening, what trends are happening, and any other background information that's just going to help you make that deeper dive into the market or the industry. So this one's looking at cross-border e-commerce, looking at shopping behavior, logistics, and as an example side, this one's quite a good example. So this is looking at global cross-border e-commerce market share. You again have your main data here, but on the right-hand side, you have this kind of running commentary, just explaining in more detail what exactly is going on. So that is the Dossier Plus. If you do find a Dossier Plus on a subject that you're working on, I highly, highly recommend having a little flick through there. We then have our industry reports. So our industry reports are basically a bird's eye view of a particular industry in a particular year. So if we use this one as an example, looking at the manufacturing of textiles globally. So these provide a really great SWOT analysis of this industry, but they also go into the financials of the industry, top companies, employees, and salaries. So first of all, providing you with some quick key figures. So you have your financials, number of companies, employees, and salaries, impact of COVID, looking into the global market. Here you have a pre and post COVID forecast comparison, and then going into the financials. So here you can see industry revenue, you can see Saudi within here as well. Global comparison for the revenue, production value, operating surplus, trade and investment data, so looking at import-exports, top importers, top exporters, and then looking into a little bit on tariffs, investment data, merger and acquisitions, and then looking into top companies. So here you'll have your top 10 companies in terms of revenue, what exactly that revenue was, number of employees, and where exactly their headquarters are, number of enterprises, and then finally looking into employees and salaries. So where exactly are people employed within the industry, number of employees, hours worked, earnings, and wages. And then finally looking into some kind of research and development data as well. We then have our brand reports. So our brand reports, this data does come from the Global Consumer Survey, so you do have access to this in more detail from the GCS, but I think these lay out the data in quite a nice, easy to use way as well, so sometimes it's quite nice to flick through these too. So these always include the same three key areas. They always look at the customer demographic, the customer lifestyle, and then some marketing touch points as well. This one's looking at Amazon Pay, but we do obviously cover far more brands throughout here as well, so there might be something might be more relevant for you. First, we're looking at that demographic, so looking at a bit of a competitor analysis, so you can see where they are behind PayPal, Apple Pay, and Google Pay. The demographics of their customers as well, so looking at what kind of gender are they, age, community type, what kind of age are their consumers, what kind of income do they have, what kind of household are they living in, and the type of community that they're in. You can then look at their customer lifestyle, so attitudes towards finances, what kind of other hobbies or interests do they have, how do they feel about innovation and tech, what kind of life values do they have, so what things are important to them in their life, and then finally looking at some marketing touch points, so diving a little bit deeper into what kind of devices are they using, how exactly are they using social media, how are they consuming media, and then any advertising touch points as well, so where exactly are they seeing adverts at the moment. Does anyone have any questions regarding the report shop? Okay, cool. So now if we go back to the home page, and again, this uses a keyword search, and you can narrow that down again by either adding more keywords or using a filter. This search basically pulls everything that we have available on the platform. So this pulls all of the market outlooks, studies and reports, and topic pages and statistics as well. Topic pages are really handy to look at, especially if you're not really sure what to search for or where to start. These break down some of the data that we have available in a really lovely way. So first of all, there's a dossier on the topic, and some quick key figures. All of these as well are linked to actual statistics that are on the platform. It then breaks down some of the statistics that we have into chapters. So first of all, giving you a bit of an overview, looking at some kind of benchmarking, going into some shopping traffic and shopping behavior, and then going into digital payments and the impact of COVID as well. All of these as well will provide you with some quick infographics if there are any on the subject, and some further reports based on what you're currently looking at. Now, if we go into an actual statistic, like this one here, share of consumers who will keep their online shopping habits in Saudi and UAE after COVID. Again, you have your main statistic here, main data here, and you have all of the sourcing on the right-hand side here, including a link back to the original source as well. This one's clearly quite a long report, because we even bring you directly to the page that this data was taken from. Again, this is all downloadable, so PDF, Excel, image, PowerPoint, and we also have a number of tools down the right-hand side here. The first is to add it to your favorites. They'll then appear up here. You can then organize your favorites into chapters and then create a dossier of your own with statistics that you have chosen. We then have a notification service, so this will drop you an email every time that statistic has been updated on the platform. You can change the presentation type, not that handy for the graph that I've chosen, but you could change it into a line graph if you wanted, or into a table format if need be. You can also add data labels or remove them or whatever you would like. You can share it as well. And also we have a citation tool here with the main kind of citation types as well. Finally, down the bottom, just some further information. So a little bit more on the reports that we have available on the subject that you're looking at, and also some further statistics here as well. Does anyone have any questions regarding the main search or the statistics themselves? Okay, one last thing to show you is in the tools. So you also have access to this publication finder. The publication finder works in a similar way to Google Scholar, in that it scans the first 20 or so paragraphs of the publication for whatever word or phrase that you've searched for. This is a separate search from the main search that we just used, but it's another string to the bow when you're doing your research, and will just help you find some more information. There are over 3 million documents on here, so my e-commerce search has just brought up nearly 23,000. But you can then start to narrow that down. So say, for example, you were looking for a particular KPMG report on e-commerce. You can filter down that way, and that will take you directly into the report, straight into the PDF. Just saves you a little bit of time, sometimes going through Google or going through a particular person's website. You can have a flick through here as well and see if there's anything else that you can use for your reports. These are the main key areas I wanted to cover today. Does anyone have any questions or anything else that they would like to ask or anything that they would like me to go through again or in a little bit more detail. Yep, I can go through the infographics. Again, there are two ways to go into these, and you're free and welcome to use these. So you can either go through into the infographics page, and these are basically created by our infographics team on kind of hot topics at the moment, and any other like interesting news stories as well. So you can look at kind of coffee time with tea in the UK, or where food production is happening the most. This is one way to go through. Another way to search for them, if there was a particular subject that you were looking at that you would like to see if there's some infographics for, you can narrow that down by just searching in the main search and filtering down to infographics, and this will show you some linked infographics here as well. Another tool that can also be quite handy is the business plan export. Although it's called a business plan export, you don't have to use it as a business plan, but it's just a quick and easy way to download some data as well. So for example, you are looking into, I don't know, the food industry in Saudi, you can export all of that data, and that will export the data from our outlooks here as well. And it just exports it into a really lovely Excel spreadsheet that you can kind of edit, and it shows some comparisons against from, for example, Saudi to global levels, and also regional levels as well. It's another kind of useful tool that we have on the platform. Any other questions at all? Yes, I can send a recording of this across. I will send that over to the library staff team, and they'll be able to share that across as well. I don't have a sample list of journal articles that have used statistical data. I'm not sure if we have those to hand, but I can look into that and see if we do have anything for you.